Trails? What are chemtrails?
Chemical trails, Daddy, and they're very bad.
I look up to the sky. Can you tell me why? Can you tell me why?
Not sure what's wrong with our audio. This is Dane Wigington of GeoEngineeringWatch.org radio for the week of December 27th, 2014. We'll try to get that audio squared away. Seems like we're having trouble every week with that. But anyways, this is what happens with radio. I have Russ Danner with us today as always. Russ is in Maine today. Greg Palin in Georgia as always. We'll get to some discussion in a few minutes that I want to talk about personal responsibility with the citizens of not just our country but of the world, and how that's been taken away from people's list of priorities. There is no sense of personal responsibility anymore. It's not just a power structure that's clinically insane. It's a population that does not want to show any sense of responsibility toward the whole. That's how we end up in such a dark place. We'll get to that discussion in a minute. First, short update. The continental U.S. is heading for another polar vortex cool down just in time to end 2014 and begin 2015. This is about headlines. It's about public perception. Right when we end what will be the warmest year ever recorded on planet Earth, by having such a cool down at this time, a very short-lived cool down, in spite of a December that saw over 2,400 high-temperature records set in the continental U.S., and those records are short of the actual amount that that would have normally been counted. There's a manner in which the record keeping is being manipulated now that doesn't typically show as many on the high end as the low end. But nevertheless, this engineered cool down to bring out the old year, bring in the new year, will continue to skew perception with the U.S. population, even within the anti-geoengineering community, that the planet's warming. Because it's astounding how many people, even in our own community, that don't acknowledge the engineered nature of these cool downs. That's baffling to me. When we have the patents to back it up, when we know that jet stream is being manipulated, when we know that the moisture is being chemically ice-nucleated, how is this not put into the equation? I don't understand this. I hope that changes for the good of our cause so that we can gain credibility with our cause. So, a few statistics, and again, this cool down won't last for long. In fact, the long lead forecast already shows very mild temperatures by mid-January, and that will continue. But the fact that and they've done this before, in fact, last year and the year before, right at the new year, the big engineered cool down occurs. Lots of headlines related to, again, the ending of one year, the beginning of another, that it's so cool. And what's really astounding this time is the nature in which the jet stream surrounds the continental United States. I'm going to send an image of this that Russ can hopefully post in the chat room to show just how nearly perfectly the jet stream configuration surrounds the continental United States. It's astounding. And this is, again, the engineered nature of what they're doing. When we have record warm ocean temperatures, by the way, again, something that's not being talked about a whole lot. So just a few statistics to go over the actual facts. And I challenge anybody to disprove what I'm saying statistically, mathematically, with any credible source. We've had 358 consecutive months of above normal global temperatures. 358, 38 consecutive years. 2014 is already considered the warmest year ever recorded, even before we reach the end of the year, because the data is so heavily weighted in that direction. We've had the warmest April on record, or second warmest, depending on the study, warmest May, warmest June, warmest August, warmest September, warmest October. We had the warmest 12-month period, as I've just mentioned. The bottom line is, what is climate engineering about? Amongst all the other things that we know, weather warfare, biological experimentation, weather manipulation for purposes of derivatives trading, which is another form of weather warfare. But amongst all these reasons, it's also about hiding from public perception, as long as possible, the gravity of what's unfolding around us, that the planet is not just warming, it's in total meltdown, absolute total meltdown. In Northern California, in fact, until about 3 days ago, we had not been below 47 degrees. That's astoundingly warm. We used to get frosts by mid-October, 47 degrees. That's the nighttime low. That's as cold as we've been. Why are all the leaves falling off the trees? The deciduous trees, black oaks, because it has not been cold enough for that natural occurrence to have taken place. The abscission hormone for the trees has not dropped the leaves. The trees, after the last few rains, this happened about 4 weeks ago, this has happened the last 4 years, all the leaves in the deciduous trees wad up dead and hang on the trees after specific rains in the fall. Why is that? It hasn't been cold enough. Leaves don't normally die completely stone dead, wadded up on the trees, hanging there, and sometimes they'll hang there all winter long now. It looks as if they're using some type of defoliant, and they have these defoliants, by the way. They've been used with food orchards for a number of years now because it's not getting cold enough for the trees to drop their leaves, and the trees have to go into dormancy. So they chemically induce this. It makes the leaves die on the trees. It's exactly what we're seeing. I have lab tests in right now looking for what may be being used. There's a lot of elements that can be used, and it's difficult to find a specific one if you don't know what you're looking for. But this is to create the perception of cold. All the leaves fall off the tree. It must be cold, right? Even though it hasn't been much below 50 degrees in Northern California until recently. In places of Northern California, depends on where you're at. But this is all about the perception of cold. So I hope that people actually, this goes back to personal responsibility, and then we'll continue the conversation. I want to get callers in early and get Greg and Russ involved. But this all goes back to personal responsibility to investigate, to challenge our perceptions, to challenge our ideology. We're all looking through colored lenses. So if we're trying to convince someone that they're spraying in the sky when that person is already looking through a lens that says, no, our government would never do this to us, and we expect that person to unfog his lens, to clear that lens so he can see clearly that they're spraying above us, then we have to stand on solid ground in our perceptions as well. And the fact is that the climate is in full-blown meltdown. It's not just geoengineering. Geoengineering is a huge aspect and the one I'm completely focused on. But the planet, the atmosphere, holds everything in. Things don't just fly out into space. So dumping 100 million tons of what amounts to pollution into the atmosphere a day, 100 million tons, it doesn't just disappear. So this is part of the delusion when people, even in our own movement, want to believe that we've done no damage to the planet, nothing. And that if we could just stop one thing, that everything would go back to normal. That's not reality. And the reason this is a problem to think in this manner or to remain in this conclusion is because it strips credibility away from our cause with the entire other half of the global community that realizes cutting down forests and putting 100 million tons of CO2 in the atmosphere a day, paving the planet, killing the oceans, that's a problem. That is a problem. Climate engineering, even bigger problem. Climate engineering is the epitome of human insanity, the absolute epitome. It is the greatest assault on life ever initiated by the human race. So, again, if we're to have credibility in our cause, it's important that people within our cause also look at the facts, stand on hard data, and understand that it's a complex situation. It's not just this or that. Too many people think dichotomously. It's a religious type of thinking. We have it. We're the only ones. Everybody else is wrong. There's only one aspect of this equation. That's a dichotomous type of thinking that's not helpful to credibility. It's not helpful to building bridges with other people and other communities. So when we can take a climate scientist, for example, and say, yes, we understand that the planet's warming, but the climate science community, the whole climate science community with almost no exceptions, is completely delusional and in denial about the single greatest climate-altering factor of all, climate engineering. So if we're to build a bridge with those people and try to get them to come out of the shadows, it's important that we don't have other perspectives on this issue that are so discrediting that they won't listen to us. We don't want that. We want to build a bridge with these people, not burn it. So with that in mind, Russ and Greg, I'd like each of your perspectives, and then we'll go to calls after that, on personal responsibility. And this goes into two categories. Again, we have a population that as a whole doesn't want to know. They don't want to know. They want to watch football games, go to tailgate parties, drink beer, eat chips. They don't want to know. They're going to know soon because the walls are closing in. But that is a total lack of personal responsibility. So because I've had a lot of people also express to me that the population is not responsible for any of this. It's only the power structure. And that's a lie. That's an absolute lie. One, the power structure couldn't be in power if it wasn't for a complacent population. And two, especially today, we've been so trained. I mean, when I walk around, and I did yesterday, went to town just to see the spectacle of how many people are completely in their own bubbles with their iPhones, with their gifts, their material things, and everything they're doing. No clue that their reality is about to be completely turned upside down. Completely. Nothing's going to stop this, short of divine intervention or some outside force that we don't know about. And I'm not saying that lightly. I'm not spiritually saying I don't believe anything exists. I hope we're not alone, because if we are, we have no chance. But the bottom line is, at face value, it looks bad. Let's hope there's factors in this equation that we don't yet know or see, and there likely is. From even a science perspective, there's always many variables we don't see. But at face value, when I see these people in town going around with no clue whatsoever as to how dire their situation is, how immediate, and how rapidly it's going to change, this is about personal responsibility. We have been trained to not consider that we have we should have a sense of responsibility toward the whole. Our population has been completely taken away from that place. So where do we go from here unless the population wakes up to the fact that it has a responsibility toward the whole, toward the common good? Short of that, we can't change direction, and we have to change direction. So this is the hurdle we need to get over. Greg, you've dealt with a lot of we talked about it before, but your family, I've shared about my family, friends, people we know, that don't seem to want to show any sense of personal responsibility. So in your opinion, yes, we have a power structure that's clinically insane and for lack of any better terms, evil. But do we not have a population also that has allowed this to happen and is continuing to allow it to happen because they just won't prioritize anything for the common good? Greg?
Yes, Dane, I think you are exactly right with that synopsis. And yet, I was a little remiss in not getting Mary Lou a Christmas gift, and I was 2 days late, and I just stopped by a shop, and when I went in this shop, there were 4 different women in there, and I got on my normal spiel, gave them all GeoEngineering brochures, got them all engaged, gave them all DVDs, and not one of those 4 women, they were all mothers, knew about geoengineering. They knew nothing about it. So I think we do have a large segment of the population that would just ignore these issues. My own father was one of those people, and I quote, probably 3 years ago, he said, "There are no chemtrails. It's not affecting my family." And I wanted to bring this up today because it just shows me. I had a very heartwarming event happen 2 days ago or 3 days ago. I got a $500 check from my dad for the billboard campaign. And I called him back. I said, "Dad, you just reached 350,000 people because that billboard that we've got up reaches 700,000 people a month for $1,000 a month. And it just goes to show you that never give up on anybody. And you really don't want to give up on your family in particular. But as much as I thought I would never, ever reach my own father, I think that's a pretty big turnaround to go from saying there are no chemtrails, it's not affecting my family, to a $500 donation. And I can't tell you how many times I've brought up this topic. It's probably hundreds of times in different ways. Because I think fundamentally, because they're the people closest to you, you want to reach them the most. And I had about given up. And I had tears in my eyes when I saw that check come in. My dad wrote the check. And it wasn't about, let's get the family together for Christmas. I think he really is starting to see. He was in the Matrix for so long, into the Walter Cronkite generation that believes everything that the TV tells them. And he's a smart man, and I think he's starting to see what we see, that we've been lied to most of our lives. And it really was encouraging to see him come around. I can't wait to see him here in a couple hours, to be quite honest with you.
Craig, you said something that was key to me, not affecting me or my family. Isn't that really a programmed-in mindset with so much of the American population? As long as it's not affecting me, I don't give a damn. And that's been really effectively programmed into all of us. Now, if we didn't have climate engineering, if we didn't have an imploding biosphere, which we do have, even if we were living comfortably and nothing appeared to be breathing down on us here, would it not also always be our responsibility to care if there are people dying in other countries, being oppressed by our own military in many cases, amongst others? Even if we were comfortable here and not being affected personally, must we not also care for the common good? We could have been born in Africa or anywhere else. We didn't choose to be born here or with the benefits we've had. And we would also it would be incumbent upon us to care about what's happening to other people in other places, even if we were comfortable here. But this is, again, the sense of the common good that seems to be completely lacking in modern culture. I'm glad you've had the progress you've had. I haven't had that with my family. In fact, there's no communication at all. I haven't abandoned them, but they've certainly abandoned me. But I have another family, which I consider to be everybody who gives a damn in the larger population. Russ, your scenario, what you've seen with people who seem to show no sense of responsibility toward the common good, your take on that?
Well, I think it's all about principles. People say, like the statement you just made a second ago, Dane, is that people say if it doesn't affect me or my family, I don't care. To act in this selfish way and not care about other people is exactly what the power structure is counting on. That is why, as you said yourself, Dane, a second ago, we are programmed to act that way because they want you to act in your own self-interest. That is why they are in power today. That is the only way that they can be in power. If we begin to care about each other and care about the world enough to educate ourselves, that is what puts us out of power, because then we begin to act and we become motivated. So I couldn't agree with you more about that principle. And if people are acting in their own self-interest, it is a horrible thing. There's nothing wrong with protecting yourself and your family. But if you don't go beyond that, there is no neutral. There is no saying, well, I'm going to protect me and my own and I don't care about the rest of the world. That's not neutral. There's no such thing. That is selfish. And they are counting on us to act selfishly.
And the point with that, to back up what you're saying, is we are all floating on the same boat. This rock in space that sustains life because of these miraculous life support systems that are being decimated from top to bottom. So there is no, I'll just live here in my bubble. That's not going to work. We're all going to sink or swim together. And I know I've said this before. It's one example that I make myself remember every day about. It's just one story, but I read a story about a 7-year-old blind, deaf, and dumb black boy that was dumped at a train station in Africa, and he lived there. He survived somehow for a very extended time. And I think about what that would be like to not be able to see, know who you are, communicate, hear, speak to anybody else, know where you're going to go to the bathroom, what you're going to eat. What sort of hell would that be? And so long as there's anybody living in such a condition, how can we just go about our lives as if nothing's wrong? And let alone what we face today, where the biosphere is imploding around us, 200-plus species of plant and animal a day going extinct, the power structure oppressing everybody, our own power structure, part of this oppression. How can we just go on about our lives, watching football games and American Idol and so forth? I mean, this is astounding. And the point I'm trying to make is simply this. Yes, we have a power structure that many of which should be tried in Nuremberg-type trials. No question about that. Absolutely criminally insane, committing ecocide, committing genocide. Yes, that is true. But we also have a population that has to find a sense of responsibility, or we will not be able to change direction. And to speak with confidence to those people, as Greg's done with his own family, very successfully with his own family, by not giving up, by not giving in, and with confidence, continuing to put out credible data to his family and not abandoning that quest. And he's had success now, and I appreciate what you shared, Greg. But it's up to all of us to confidently stand our ground, no matter what resistance we get from family or friends around us, to peacefully but confidently stand our ground. Russ, can you open up phone lines?
Absolutely. For those who want to call in, the call-in number is 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. Just call in and mute your phone, and we'll call on you when you're ready.
You know, also, Greg, Russ, you know, I want both your guys' take on this as well. When any of us speaks a truth that's not comfortable to others, we get resistance for that. Whether that's trying to tell someone who doesn't believe that they're spraying the skies, that's really occurring, and we get the resistance from a person who doesn't want to believe that. Same thing when it comes to other harsh realities, like the fact that we have a lot of challenges on our planet, and we have people, again, within our own movement that seem just as unwilling to face that issue, which again hurts our credibility, as others are unwilling to face the spraying issue. And I mean issues like resource depletion, which I've gotten flack from certain arenas for saying that. It's the truth. I don't care what flack I get. I don't care if that alienates certain people. I can't help that. That's what the data states, and I've studied the data a lot, and I stand by it. We absolutely have resource issues. Tell that to anybody who doesn't believe that. Tell that to the fishermen that are coming back with nothing in their nets all over the globe. Tell that to them. So the bottom line is, all of us to constantly examine our perspectives, stand back, wipe the slate clean, and look again. Why do I feel the way I feel? What has given me this impression or conclusion? Where has it come from? Is it reality, or is it something I've adopted as reality? It's up to all of us to do that. The more solid ground we stand on, the more chance we have of changing direction. Bottom line. Greg, you know, on this issue, the people around you probably don't really, if I understand from everything you share with me, not only don't recognize the aerosol issue, but the fact that we have some very serious challenges bearing down on us now. They probably don't recognize that too much either, do they?
Most don't, and that's why I tend to introduce the other topics, whether they be fluoride or GMO or mercury in the vaccines. I'm finding that with my own family, they have just recently, all of them, made eating non-GMO food a big issue. And so this is one way that they've already realized that they're being poisoned purposely. And I think once people get over one of those stumbling blocks, it is easier if you can show them that, hey, your water fluoridation is poisoning you, your food is poisoning you, your air is poisoning you. And I was reading a quote here from Dave Foreman, the co-founder of Earth First. This is an Agenda 21 related quote. I did a radio interview a couple of weeks ago, as you know, Dane, with Agenda 21 Radio. And this quote reads, "My three main goals would be to reduce human population to about 100 million worldwide, destroy the industrial infrastructure, and see wilderness with its full complement of species returning throughout the world." Ted Turner, a total population of 250 to 300 million people, a 95% decline from present levels would be ideal. That's from the founder of CNN and major UN donor. It's really sad because the people on the street don't understand. And if you can even get them to see it, to me, the geoengineering / chemtrails is so obvious that it is hard to overlook. I think it's a fairly, especially when the sky is putrid, it's pretty easy. I took those four ladies out an hour or two ago outside, and I said, look at the trails in the sky. I said, you need to watch that DVD and spread it around. You know, we had these DVDs made so you could pass them on. Again, we all have such a massive circle of influence that we don't even realize. We just have to be willing to reach outside our comfort zone. We don't have much time left.
Well, this is where, again, the equation becomes complicated. When people like Turner and the others talk about population issues, one, perhaps they should be the first to go, given all that they have done to help create the paradigm that has brought us to this dark corner. That's where the power structure is especially at fault, because the power structure has created a paradigm in which the population is especially out to lunch. And that's where, again, such a huge amount of criminal culpability lies with the power structure, that they have set this whole paradigm up, from fossil fuels to all the consumer mass distraction that we have. But mathematically speaking, the planet cannot support the population that's here. That's a fact, and I'll probably get a lot of blowback for making that statement, even though it's fact. That doesn't mean I agree with anything the power structure is going on, and this is where the dichotomous thinking comes in with people, and this is wrong. It's that if you agree with any fact from any source that's part of this power structure, then you must agree with everything from them. This is a religious type of thinking, in the sense that they've adopted a religion of a certain perspective, and it's very dichotomous. It's very black and white. Sorry, but the world is not black or white. It's not black or white. If we're to stand on solid ground, we have to stand on facts. And if a power structure says the world is round, we can't say, no, it has to be flat, because we can't agree with anything that they say. That's part of what creates our problem, our division. It can't work that way. Facts are facts, period. So the bottom line is, again, that the population has to wake up and realize that they are responsible to help us fight for the common good. And I know so many people that simply have no desire to do that, none. And we have to have them involved in order to turn the direction of this ship and have anything left to salvage. So it's up to all of us to confidently stand our ground with credible facts, credible data, not ideology. Because as soon as we adopt ideology, we're just like all those who don't want to face the spraying. We're the same. Russ, your take.
Yes, I absolutely agree. I think that if we don't educate ourselves, then we're leaving ourselves to be very vulnerable about this to begin with. We need to be thinking for ourselves. That is one of the most important one of the biggest issues that I see, Dane, is that people just blindly accept what's going on, what they're told. And there's a concept called scientism, and this was written in the power structure's own literature, which I like to study because I like to understand what's going on in their heads. And what scientism is it is the process of controlling the public through false science. We will make up our own facts and figures, we'll call it science, and then we will use it as a control mechanism for the public. That is something people need to be aware of.
Do you not see that also, that same practice within the community of people who know they're spraying? Do we not see the same exact behavior?
Well, absolutely. I mean, that compartmentalization. I mean, these pilots are being told that according to some of the whistleblowers, to shut up and do their job because where our enemies are creating a smoke screen tracking system in their atmosphere, something to this effect, in order to defend themselves, and that we have to do the same thing. So just shut up and do your job. So there's compartmentalization, and there's being lies told to those who are inside the system itself. But we are all breathing the air.
I'm not talking about inside, not just that, Russ. I'm talking about within the community of people who are who claim to be fighting to stop climate engineering. I see the same sort of behavior there. I see the same exact behavior that I see with people who want to wave their American flags and not consider the reality that we're being sprayed by our own government. But I see within our own community people who are not looking at facts, who have adopted an ideology, and who are actually helping to sell climate engineering by pretending that certain events like the polar vortex that's coming up is in some way natural. I don't understand that. I don't understand how you can claim to be fighting and acknowledging climate engineering and yet not recognize the engineered nature of certain events.
Well, it's like you said. I mean, we have no natural weather today. So for those, I mean, I think that's, fundamental to accept. We all accept. I think that we all accept that that spraying is bad. This is not solving any problems whatsoever. This is creating a set of problems that is larger than any other set of problems that are even claiming to be settled by the geoengineers. We all agree with that.
Elaborate on that. I'm not quite clear. Give some clarification on that point, if you would.
Well, I'm just saying that I think that anybody who is willing to accept that spraying is going on would reject the spraying. If they understood the basic facts that it is, how harmful it is for us. But you're talking about within the movement or within the people who are unwilling to accept this is going on.
I would argue this, and I agree with you on this point. If we're to be effective as a group, we need to march together in some sort of uniform fashion. And that means that, one, we can either all stand on the fact that, yes, we're all being poisoned, and that should be enough. That should be enough to stand in unity on this issue. And if anything is discussed outside that basic premise, it must be discussed with credible facts and not the very ideology that the climate engineers, the power structure, the military-industrial complex, and the oil companies want us to believe. And the propaganda that they put out that, for example, the planet is cooling. And if people push that point, that is helping to sell climate engineering because that's exactly what they want us to think. That's exactly the point they want us to think, is the planet is cooling. Thus, the big engineered cool down that we see, I brought up at the beginning of the show, the polar vortex surrounding exactly the landmass of the continental U.S. Is that an accident that happens year after year, the last 3 years, right at the end of the New Year's, the start of the coming year? Is that an accident? So if we allow one event that they make a lot of headlines to allow our community to take a position that completely alienates us from the climate science community that we're trying to, there's a lot of background noise, Russ, somewhere somebody's got going on. If we don't stand on solid facts that can help us build bridges with the climate science community that we need to at some point get to come out of the shadows and start to tell the truth, because they're not, then we need to stand on credible data. So again, going back to not just our community, but the community at large, there's doing no real research. that is standing in their own preconceptions and most of their opinions, that paradigm needs to break. People need to look at hard, credible data, whether it's the fact that they're spraying in our skies, the true state of the climate, what our government's doing in Ukraine, our government's part in conflicts around the globe. On all these issues, people need to re-examine why they feel what they feel, what's given them their conclusions. That's a responsibility, is it not?
Yeah, well, I think that, regardless of where people are coming from, I don't want to isolate any people in any particular group or belief system. The bottom line is that we are being sprayed, and that spray does more damage than good. I know we're getting a lot of background noise. When people call in, please mute your phones. I have to disconnect you if there's too much background noise. I'm sorry for that. Anyway, regardless of where people are coming from, I think it's kind of confusing in a way for people when we try to get into the deeper subjects. People want to get deeper into it. Go ahead and get deeper into it, but understand, I think that the people who control the oil companies control our government as well. We live in a fascist world today.
Okay, so, you're right. On that point, I want to elaborate and you continue on that point. And I agree with you completely, by the way. So I would ask, would the oil companies, and certainly they're a part of the geoengineering, there's no question about that, would they want us to think that the planet's in full-blown meltdown? Or would they want us to think, and I'm not going back, if you go back 10 years, yes, there was agendas being pushed for carbon credits, all that's a scam, Al Gore's a criminal, I agree with all that completely. But I'm asking right now, do you think that the oil companies would want us to think the planet's in meltdown, or that the planet's going into an ice age and burning fossil fuel is fine?
Well, I think that they would think that we would be in a meltdown because of their...
I'm asking you what you think that they would want us to think.
Well, I would think that they would want us to think that we're in a meltdown. I mean, would that make sense?
Why would the oil companies who want us to continue burning oil want us to think that?
Well, I see what you're saying. I understand your point. I think that the problem is the people who control the oil companies are the same people who control the government, and their philosophy is about population reduction. And
I don't argue that. But if we have headlines, CNN, now Weather Channel, all these power structure-owned organizations that are doing everything they can to totally theaterize the cool downs, does that really tell us that they want us to think it's warming?
Well, I don't know. I think that the bottom line is that the people who run... I'm sorry.
Somebody's got a lot of background noise going on.
So I'm going to have to reject that caller from now on because every time they call in, they have a lot of noise. Nevertheless, when we have a cool down, what do you think they're trying to do? I mean, I think in what has been pushed on the public for a long time has been global warming. We've been hearing about global warming and that we have to spray the atmosphere. But right now, the public doesn't know that they're being sprayed. So I think what will happen, I think it almost might not even make a difference, to be honest with you, Dane, because when the way that they're pushing the idea of spraying is they're going to have, a couple planes in the air. It depends on who you talk to and what day you talk to them, whether it's David Keith or Ken Caldera. But they talk about, it's just going to be adding 1% of pollution. I've heard, David Keith said that on Colbert, right? Didn't he?
Well, it is. Now, look, let's go back to that. And Greg, I'll get you in a moment. But let's go back to David Keith and even the figure he gave at the conference that was televised that I got him on the question of had any studies been done. Yes, 20 million tons of aluminum nanoparticulates is a small percentage of the overall amount of pollutant that's put in the atmosphere every day. But that percentage is highly toxic, much more so than the other pollution. So yes, it's a smaller percentage, but what I'm getting at is if we have a weather channel that's clearly owned by the power structure, whose mission it is clearly to make it look like it's a coming ice age, if we have CNN and the rest, and yes, we have a certain segment of the science community that's trying to disclose the fact that it's warming, but if we have the mainstream media and the oil companies trying to convince us, and the geoengineers, the military-industrial conflicts, those are all the same. They're all the same entity.
They're all the same people, that's right.
They're all the same entity, and we don't see the same message as we did 10 years ago, where they were more or less trying to let some of this data out, because they know the public will never accept being sprayed. Never.
Right. So
they might try to sell it at some point, but they know they'll never accept it. So all I'm saying is that from the same message from this whole complex, not just to our community, but to the population as a whole, is that everything's fine. All this alarmism is absolute nonsense. There's no problem. There's no die-off. There's no resource issue. Just go shop, go buy, go use your iPhone. And anybody who says there's something wrong is an alarmist.
Well, let me ask you this.
I agree.
Let me
Go ahead, Russ.
let me ask you this question, this perspective. Do they really care? Because they're already spraying. They're already doing population reduction. So maybe they can make a concession to the public to gain credibility back to mainstream media, saying, okay, we're going to go ahead and concede that global warming isn't what we originally projected it to be. So they're making a concession to gain their credibility back, because we all know that mainstream media is a control mechanism. It's very highly controlled. It's very highly coordinated, but they're still doing the spraying. So they don't really care what the public thinks, because the public doesn't even know about it for the most part. They don't care. So it's kind of like they're gaining credibility back in the public's eyes while the rest of us get sprayed anyway. You know, I mean,
what I would suggest is there's been Greg, then I want you to chime in. What I would suggest is there a number of years back was a massive change in direction from the power structure, that they realized the situation was far more grave than they had hoped it would be. The public would never accept being sprayed. They just simply had to go into cover-up mode, and that's what they're doing. So now anybody who says that there's global extinction going on is an alarmist. Anybody who says the climate system is completely disintegrating is an alarmist. Let's all just keep shopping, just like Bush said after 9/11. Go back, shop, go to the movies. Just be a consumer. This is what we've been fed. This is a paradigm people want to stay in. It's the frog in boiling water. And the same is true with the overall, whether it's a resource issue, climate issue, what our media wants us to think, while they show us the ridiculous parade of things they show us, that everything's fine. And that's why Weather Channel doesn't even cover anymore. They don't even cover weather on the weekends anymore. They haven't for the last 4 weeks, or holidays, because they don't want people thinking about it anymore. They don't want people wondering how it goes from 100 degrees to snow in a day. Why aren't people wondering about that? And so what I'm saying is that people in many arenas, including our own, need to wake up and look at solid data and consider who is running the show, what would they want you to think, and why. That should be considered. And I would argue when we have Weather Channel owned by Rothschilds, Weather Central owned by, actually Weather Channel is owned by Blackstone and other groups. Weather Central is owned by Rothschilds. We have a big climate organization owned by Monsanto. When power structure owns all these, they're controlling the message. And what message are they putting out? When Weather Channel names winter storms, when they theaterize it beyond belief, absolutely beyond belief, when one little train of snow on the east side of Buffalo, where Buffalo, New York is, they focus on 7 feet of snow in one spot, and you could throw a rock to no snow, but the only thing they cover is the areas where the snow is. I think we see a message there coming from the power structure, and we should think about, well, what are they trying to make us think and why? And back to the public as a whole, and back to the main theme of what I wanted to bring up, is we have a public that doesn't want to take any sense of responsibility. So while everybody's pointing at the power structure, rightfully so, and how evil they are, because they are, there's a huge segment of the public that, at the same time, doesn't want to change their behavior, their lack of responsibility toward the whole, their lack of contribution to the whole. They don't want to change it. Greg?
I agree with you, Dane. I think a lot of it is about keeping the public in their normalcy bias, and obviously it's much easier to keep the public in their normalcy bias when things are normal, or at least the speed is normal. It's not 150 degrees and 24 feet of sea level rise, and yet. So I do think that they want to keep, and I think they've overplayed their hand, Dane. I think that's clear. I think that they really believe that the fluoride and the GMO and all these other ways we are being attacked have rendered us delusional. And I would argue that, you know, there's a large portion of the population that is delusional, but there's also a very determined small portion of the population that I think can make a huge difference in this short amount of time that I think we have left to make a difference. And part of a little bit of proof of that delusional state, Dane, after we talked about John Nissen, the chairman of AMEG, last Saturday, I emailed him Saturday evening, and I said, "Hi, John. I hope that you are well. I've done some of my research on GeoEngineeringWatch.org. I wanted to see what he was going to say. Is that a reliable source of information in your opinion?" And it didn't go on much longer than that. He said, this was his response on December 21st, Sunday, "No, GeoEngineering Watch is a thoroughly biased organization promoting disinformation, in my opinion. Geoengineering is treated as an evil plot by capitalist elements in our society rather than a necessary intervention for human survival. To put it in perspective, the human cost of not geoengineering in time to save the Arctic sea ice will be limitless." This guy is delusional.
He's completely.
Am I not correct?
He's not just delusional, but to a point of criminality. And this is where I would like to see, copy that email as well. We need to put his
I'll send it to you right now.
We need his email out for everybody to be able to communicate with people like him, because this is the whole climate science community. The whole climate science community is completely in their own delusional bubble. It's an astounding state of affairs we find ourselves in when we have so many people that have been so well indoctrinated or are so concerned about back to their own personal situation. They don't want to risk their paycheck, their retirement, that they're willing to let the whole ship go down in order to protect that. And that's criminal when they are the people we are relying on for the truth. It's absolutely criminal. So when we have a society, again, that wants to hear only what makes them feel that their personal party will continue, they don't want to hear anything else, anything outside of that is rejected, and that's how the whole ship goes down. And when we have pastors on pulpits, for example, the name it, claim it pastors, who simply say, ask for this and you'll receive it if you ask, in the right way. And it creates people's delusion that if you have the right mindset, you'll never be exposed to hardship and difficulty. How are we to learn anything without hardship and difficulty? That's where life is learned. That's where values and perspectives are gained. And how many pastors do we have there that have a big congregation that would say to their congregation, struggle is part of life. It's part of learning. And living in a delusion, as John Nissen clearly is, or others in the climate science community, or in the community as a whole, how does that help the common good, to live in a delusion? So all I'm suggesting by all of this conversation is everybody needs to get out of their delusion. And if people in our community who are trying to expose climate engineering are also, just like John Nissen, living in a delusion that there's nothing wrong with the climate, that all of the things humanity has done has not had any effect on the climate except climate engineering, that is also a delusion. Just as much as John Nissen not acknowledging climate engineering has existed for 60 years and is absolutely tearing the planet apart, both delusions, both destructive to the common good. That's what I'm saying. Greg?
Most definitely. He finished, Dane, with, and I really didn't want to bring this up to you at Christmas time, but I knew you'd want to hear it. What I previously just said about, Geoengineering Watch being thoroughly biased. I wanted to say thank you, Dane, for all the credible information that you are providing. I couldn't do what I do without the DVDs that you've created, without the brochures that you've created, and your amazing contribution to this cause.
It's a team effort.
Acknowledged, and I thank you for what you've done.
The same to you, though. The same to you and Russ. It's a team effort. Everybody here in this call has contributed everything they can, and I'm it's an absolute team effort for all this to happen. And again, we're all spokes in this wheel, and the wheel can't roll without all of us. So the same to you. But when we have so much colored thinking, we can't find common ground. And colored thinking comes from conclusions that are not based on fact. And we have to stand on fact in order to have common ground, credible data. That's what I'm getting at with this whole conversation. And the fact is we have to absolutely put off all the other distractions and focus on the common good if we were to have any chance of changing course.
Dane, we do have some callers when you're ready.
Okay, go ahead, Russ.
All right, caller with your phone number that ends in 08. Welcome. Who are we speaking with?
Hi, guys. This is Corey Gunnell.
Hi, Corey.
Hey, Corey.
Thanks for taking my call. I wanted to take just a minute and announce the radiothon that's starting tomorrow. And all of you are on it, and I'm on it. It is Sylvain Henry is producing this, and it starts at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, Eastern Standard Time. And it will be live 24 hours, maybe 24 hours plus on YouTube. And you can look under Radiothon Against Chemtrails and Geoengineering. So, again, it's going to be a solid 24 hours with many speakers, including everyone on the call today. I'm running out of breath. Also, many other speakers, including Paul Mack and Mark McCandlish and Lorraine Hurley, who's a physician, Rebel Siren, Michael Murphy, Ilana Freeland, Pam Jones, Sam Cheney, Doug Diamond, Vonda Allen, just a long list. So anyway, if you go to Mass Action Demand, Chemtrails and Geoengineering and Democracy Facebook, you can get the link, or just look at YouTube and go to Radiothon Against Chemtrails and Geoengineering.
Thank you, Corey.
So, thanks.
I know you've worked hard on that, and my thanks to Sylvain Henry. He's done some tireless work in that arena. Thanks to everybody who's contributing to the call, the conversation. And again, I know we all agree that climate engineering, rationally, logically, again, back to standing on facts, it is the issue, not just an issue. It is the issue on which all other issues depend. And that's why we're all completely committed to this. Again, back to standing on facts, rational deduction, rational thinking. If one looks at the whole picture and the ramifications of climate engineering, it can't rationally be argued that this is not the greatest and most destructive human endeavor ever undertaken against the planet. So if we all stand on hard data and look at the whole picture, we'll all be standing on common ground.
Exactly. And the point tomorrow, I have my breath back, I just had to run and grab the phone. The point tomorrow is to come together as activists and on the common good and a strong emphasis on that. I've spoken to Sylvain at length, and his intention is that this is no nonsense, that we don't have a lot of time left. We're heading into 2015. We're in trouble here, and we have to pull it together.
I agree with that point as well. On that point, and that's part of what I'm saying, that when we have a power structure trying to convince everybody, and a lot of people even in our own community buying that anybody who thinks it's that dire, that our situation is that critical, is being alarmist. Well, that's exactly what the power structure wants us to think, and I hope that we do get past that, because it is that critical, it is that bad, and it is that immediate. So I agree. I hope there is that. Yes. It
is, and it is that immediate, and there isn't any reason why we can't all focus on stopping this. And I'll tell you, just minutes ago, Sylvain got a hold of me, and said that the trolls are already on it, and they're trying to pull down the broadcast for tomorrow. So I got in touch with Doug Diamond immediately, and he's helping him, get in there to clean up so that this isn't disrupted. So
on
people
that note,
should know that as well. If there are any gaps, stick with it, because the hits are coming in. They're trying to take it down.
On that note, if I can
know you're doing the right thing.
You do, and we had the DVDs disappear; they're still gone. I just got through another roundabout means of communication, a contact from a double PhD biologist that's very critical with information that involves the aluminum in the California waterways. His emails were not reaching me. Emails from several major radio shows were not reaching me. I'm sure other people are having the same issues as myself. We see counts on YouTube that are not going up as they should, with certain key posts from every direction. The power structure is absolutely pushing back against all of us that are involved in this issue, because this is the issue that will overturn reality again. It would cause a shockwave around the globe if we can all stand together and expose this issue. This is the single greatest, most catalyzing issue that we could possibly expose, and if we did so, it would change our paradigm.
Correct.
That's why the pushback.
Correct.
Most
and
definitely.
so, we carry on, and we have a lot of skilled, gifted people. That's one of the things that so impresses me with the people in this movement that I've met is we all have the things that we're good at, and if we all help each other, we can get this done. We can. So we have people that have a science background, people that are good with people that are good with radio broadcasts, computer skills, science, on and on and on. Aviation, we just have to come together.
Thank you, Corey.
Anyway, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Talk
Corey.
to you later.
Thank you, Corey. Absolutely. Dane, we have another caller if you want to take it.
Just try one.
Caller with your number that ends in 01. Who are we speaking with?
Hi, guys. It's Wanda.
Hi, Wanda.
How you doing?
Hey, Wanda.
I can see that time's coming up short. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the activism part of this, because you're always mentioning, that we all need to do more, and we're trying. But I feel like in talking to a lot of new people that are learning about this, they just don't know what direction to go in and how to go about it. And so Corey and I are putting together a list for people, and we're going to show some ideas on what people can do that don't cost money, or that will appeal to different skills. Like she was just saying, different people have different skills, and we're going to try to get it out for the new year, the post, and we'll post it on all the pages that we can think of, and to get people, just to give them some help or some standing ground on where to start out with it. And I think that that will hopefully that will help people get started on that. Like Greg, I think it's great. He's got all the stuff that he passes out, and I do that too. But having that, like just even having it on hand and knowing how to go about getting it and stuff like that. So
when you get that done, Wanda, if you can get that to me, we'll post it on the activist suggestions link on GeoEngineering Watch as well, because we do have those links there. Would like to couple that with whatever you guys put together. And this is, again, where people need to start looking also, because we have tried to post that data there, and you're now helping with that, and that's a step forward. But people need to look for that data, too. A lot of them aren't looking. They're waiting for someone to give them instruction. They need to look for those suggestions.
Well, thank you all for joining us.
Thanks, Wanda.
This is the end of the show. Thank you, Wanda. This is GeoEngineering Watch Radio. This is Russ Tanner on behalf of Dane Wigington and Greg Palin. We're here on UCY.tv every Saturday at 12 noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. We'll see you next week. Please join us.
Just wanna see us smile.